Welcome to Leadership Deprogrammed. In this program, we invite you to suspend all that you believe and know about leadership. When I speak about leadership, I'm not only speaking about a role in an organization. I'm inviting you to take up your leadership mantle wherever you are. It can be in your family, it's most needed in our communities, it can be in your church or even on your local football team. And as I mentioned, football, today's guest who's going to come and talk to us about his leadership journey. He is, I guess, one of Trinidad's most popular, most famous goalkeepers / footballers. And he's somebody who I've looked at his career as he has transitioned over the years. In fact, where he started is definitely not where he's ended. And I suspect where he is today is not where he'll be in the future. I'm inviting Shaka Hislop today to talk to us about his leadership impact and how he has been able to transition from footballer to social impactor. Hi, Shaka.
Hi, Maxine. How are you doing today?
Today I'm fine. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's a pleasure. So, Shaka, when we talk about leadership, and what does that mean to you in terms of your world and your experiences?
I think leadership is multifaceted in a number of ways. I think first and foremost, you have to be true to yourself and understand the value and truly appreciate the value that you bring to a situation and then represent that value. You also have to get people to buy in to who you are, to what you represent, and the greater good of whatever it is we're involved in. That's always the key to effective leadership. It starts with the truest understanding of your own self-worth, your value.
You know, those words ring particularly true for me as an observer watching you. Because somehow over the years, I've been seeing more and more, or hearing more and more of your voice in your role as sports analyst. I've been hearing that sort of like true Shaka voice coming through when it is, especially when it is that the people around the table do not have the same perspective as you do. What was that like in terms of finding your voice and taking your leadership that way in terms of being true to who you are?
Well, that in itself has been a journey, Maxine. Listen, I believe that the way football has been covered traditionally has been rather monotone, for want of a better description. But the truth is, football is a world sport, and it embraces all those different voices, all those different ethnicities, a lot of different opinions, and I have to represent that in who I am and in what I do. And while I do have experiences in England, that's where I spent or the vast majority of my professional career while I university educated in the US. I'm a Trinbagonian, and I have to represent our football, our opinions around the game, and I try to do that. I don't try to be like anyone else. Certainly on our panel, I try to paint the picture of the game through the lens of a young black man growing up playing a game that he loved in a small Caribbean country.
Yeah, so definitely using your own experience and all of who you are to have that impact across. And what do you think has been the impact of your voice in terms of bringing that different perspective to the game?
I don't know, Maxie. That's a question I should be asking you. What do you think is my impact has been? Listen, my only hope is that it gives other people who look just like me, who come from far-flung corners of the footballing world, a confidence in their own opinions, and a confidence in and a willingness to express that opinion, regardless of how it may differ from the others around the table. But I can't speak to how it is otherwise perceived. That's just my hope.
Yeah, well, I think hope is a good thing to have, and I want to share with you, I hear your voice, and I see what you're doing, and I think it's beautiful to watch. And I love the fact that it opens the doors in other ways for other people to stand strong and also have an opinion, especially when they don't look like the rest of the people around the table. Mm-hmm. And so what was the moment when you decided, or that you realized, that you had stepped into your own voice?
That's a difficult one to actually say. I think I've always tried to represent who I am and where I'm from as best I can, as best I could in the given situation. Um, but as my own status, for want of a better phrase, has grown within the game, as my own platform has grown with being on ESPN, I think that has amplified my voice. I don't think my voice maybe has grown that much or changed. I just think, given my own experiences and given the increasing reach of my platforms, it's able to have a greater impact.
I love that because I think it holds a really important message for a lot of us. That those of you out there, if you have a platform, what are you using it for? I mean, it's okay to take selfies and to be popular and all of that, but you can really use your platform to create common good, to amplify a message. Right, Shaka?
Yes, you touched on one of my raw nerves there, Maxine. I am not at all a social media fan. You just have to click onto any one of my feeds and see how rarely I post on there. I feel so much of who we are is lost in the pursuit of likes and comments in social media. And while I criticize social media, I also recognize the value that platform can bring if we use it correctly. And that's the thing for me. And as you talk about the amplification of my own voice or my finding my own voice, I think the social media age has shown that we can be true to ourselves, that we don't have to conform, that the whole notion around niches or having to fit in come tumbling down with social media. So you can own your space, you can own your personality, you can own exactly who you are. And I think that's the power of social media, and that's the greatest power that's being misused, unused, overlooked in social media. But at the same time, while you can use that in social media, and that's it's probably its greatest power, you can also find confidence in it in using more traditional platforms, such as the one I employ with ESPN, or the one that we're now sharing here, Matt.
At WESN, absolutely. And what I love about that statement is that, there's an idea of a professional person. And a professional person who will get a job in any form. Yours was footballing, mine was within an organization. And that we move up the ranks and we always have to be professional. And within professionalism, I found that there were a lot of constraints and confinements. And here it is, what you're saying is be yourself. Sure, follow the office rules. There will always be rules of the game. And within that, you can have yourself. So what was your, how did you know who you were?
I've always had to kind of know who I was and own the space that I've been in. I'm a big believer in example and the power of example. And I often say I cannot tell my story without telling my father's story. My father was part of the Windrush generation, as it's known in the UK, who went up to England in pursuit of employment in the early 60s. He was wrongfully arrested, him and his good friend Desmond Allen, who people in Trinidad and Tobago will know well as the former president of the Bar Association. My dad and Desmond Allen were wrongfully arrested, going home one evening by the police, arrested for auto theft. They sued the Metropolitan Police and won what was then a record settlement, £8,000. My father took his share, 4,000, enrolled in law school, came back to Trinidad for 6 weeks, met and proposed to my mother. Now, I tell that story because here we are talking about two young black men in 1960s England, in the time of no blacks, no Irish, no dogs, taking on Scotland Yard and winning. And that is the example that I have lived my entire life by. That no one is beyond reproach if you truly believe in your right, that you are right. And for me, that is what I've tried to represent. I've tried to be honest and earnest in my approach, and I haven't wavered from that, regardless of who it's up against.
And that's such a powerful story. I know before we came on air, you were talking about, when you have a thought, you scribble it down. We're going to take a break because I need to scribble down that story because it's a very powerful story. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. So we're going to take a break, and when we come back, we're chatting with Shaka Hislop.
WESN says thank you for your support this past year with giveaways until Christmas 2021. 4 steps to win. Watch our programming throughout the day. Look out for the WESN Santa pop-up. Follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Comment the name of the show and the time you saw Santa under the Santa post of the day. Win cash, hampers, vouchers and WESN merchandise. Promotion ends December 20th, 2021. Brought to you by Nestle, Westby's Supermarket, Worrell Regis and Company Limited, Fan Zone, and Crisp Clean Cleaning Solutions. Gift giving during a lockdown can still be hassle-free with a gift from Fan Zone with delivery options available nationwide. Visit and browse our Facebook and Instagram pages for all your official licensed merchandise and apparel and have it delivered to your door. Find us on Facebook and Instagram. Fan Zone, we've got you covered.
The best for your baby is at dbesttoys.com. We have the best strollers, car seats, walkers, feeding accessories, playpens, cribs, clothing, and the widest range of brand name toys like Barbie, Hot Wheels, Nerf, LOL, Fisher-Price, Cocomelon, Intex Pools, Amazon Fire tablets, HP and Gateway laptops, and the best bikes, scooters, skateboards, and ride-on. Visit us in-store at 7 Main Road, McBean, or shop online now at dbesttoys.com. That's dbesttoys.com. We have the best toys at the best prices.
If you live with someone who's tested positive for COVID-19 and has to self-isolate at home, take care of them from a distance and reduce their movement around the house. Give them space, a designated space, and open those windows. If you have to be in contact, mask up, both of you. If you work, stay home from work and don't go out, not even to the grocery or pharmacy. And remember, no visitors allowed. Limit the contact to limit the spread.
The Trinidad and Tobago Red Cross Society. Mission-based, people-focused, community-driven.
Welcome back to Leadership Deprogrammed, and today we have with us Shaka Hislop. Before the break, Shaka just shared a really powerful story about where his sort of sense of self came from and that nothing is impossible. If you didn't see it, check us back on Friday at noon. We're going to run this show again. So if you missed the first part, you can check it then. So Shaka, I was thinking before the break about your journey, and you're very much now an individual. And I'm just saying, football is a team sport. At least I think so. I'm not sure, but you will tell me. It's a team sport. And what is that like, moving from a team environment to this individual stepping out, claiming your leadership space?
That transition has been easier than maybe it sounds, and because it came more naturally to me. Because if we put it in a footballing perspective, as much as the game is a team sport, certainly goalkeeping is a very individual position. So you see yourself, you're regarded as an individual, but feeding into the wider aspect of a team ethic or team ethos. So to move from that in terms of my playing career to where I am now, I guess was just the next step in who I was to become. So I never really found that difficult. It's always about what can I do that has the greatest impact on those around.
Yeah, I thought what you said is interesting because I don't play football. But what I always thought was that a goalkeeper sort of like always has like this helicopter view of the field. I mean, I don't know. Do they actually?
I don't know. I've heard far worse things said about goalkeeping. Let me say that, Maxine. Um, Listen, we have a reputation around the position about being individual and focused on just what we are. And of course, that comes from the nature of the position. We're the
Yes.
only ones in the park who can use our hands. We sit behind everybody else. We're the last line of defense, so to speak. Um, uh, it's a specialist position, but you have to understand how you use your tools, the advantages that you're given, the disadvantages that maybe just kind of come with who you are as an athlete, and still benefit the team in the best way. So it's not necessarily a helicopter view, but it certainly is a different view. And just to put it in a rather simplistic perspective, my wife and I go to watch our kids play football now. She likes to sit at the half line so she can get an even view of the whole field and see. I kind of like standing behind a goal because that's where I'm used to seeing the game from. I'm used to seeing the game from that side of the field, and I have a better understanding of the picture from that angle. So it's not a helicopter view to your question. It's just a different view than most have enjoyed or currently seek out.
And when you explain it that way, so thanks for that clarification for me and answering my question specifically. And in your description of it, I couldn't get the feeling that it was the perfect training ground for where you are now. This different view, this different perspective.
No, absolutely. But I wouldn't say it's a perfect. I wouldn't say it's a more perfect training ground than any of the others that I've enjoyed. I think growing up in Trinidad and Tobago was perfect was the perfect training ground for who I am today. Growing up in Diamond Vale, having as close knit a family and friend network as I did then and continue now is the perfect training ground for who I am today. Sharing the field with some of the players that I did over the years, whether we're talking about Russell Latapy and Dwight York in my earliest years and seeing their own progress, whether we're talking about Dr. Wayne Frederick, who's now the president of Howard University, who has been my closest friend for nearly my entire life. We've been best friends since 13 or 14 years old. Those were key to have in me realizing who I am today, or maybe recognizing some of the values that I bring to any situation.
And what's been consistent for me in this thread, in this conversation thread, is that you always seem to be able to harness a lot of your own personal experiences, whether it is through Trinidad, through playing, and you keep referring to who you are. And so there's a great sense of self in terms of what you're doing, and you're so conscious and aware of who you are. It seems that it's really a little bit easier to make your impact and have your voice be heard. Any truth in that, in my assumption?
Absolutely. No, absolutely. I think we have to own our own story. And it is easy. And we've been taught. We've been taught as Trinidadians and Tobagonians. We've been taught as people of a once colonized country that we have to look elsewhere for answers, that we have to look elsewhere for greatness. And we have to live within our own selves and not expect or ask too much of ourselves. That's a conditioning of our history, where I feel if we look at who we are, if we look at the challenges that we have overcome, both as a country and us as individuals, of how we impact our society and our communities, we can find real strength in who we are and our stories and what we have to tell, not just our next door neighbors, but the rest of the world. I did an interview with a gentleman in England recently who's doing work in his community, a challenged community, for want of a stronger term. And he was saying that he found power in, he said, start at your obituary. Write your obituary and what you would like the world to think of you, to know of you when you are no longer present. and work towards that. And I found that really powerful. And something I wrote down as we were talking about how much I like to write when we do interviews. Now, if we think about where we'd like to be or how we want people to remember us and actively pursue that, I think we can find real direction in that ending and real power in our current standing.
Yeah, you know, I love that story, and thanks for sharing that so much. And it's a very powerful way for us to guide ourselves to who we want to be. Because when you die, everybody says nice things, but you don't want things of fluff, right? You want things of substance.
Sure.
And I'm just thinking about how perfect it is in a timeline, you know, in terms of what you shared today. You did share your origin story, which started before you were born. And you did share some of your story in terms of your transitioning. And now looking forward from where you are now to where you'll end, we're closing with your obituary as a way to keep pulling you forward. So what are some of the words on your obituary?
Yeah, maybe I might regret telling that story now, Maxine.
No.
I'll be honest. The only thing that matters to me in this life when I'm no longer of this physical world is that my kids are proud of who I am. My kids find example in how I live my life. That is the only thing that matters to me.
Yeah, and so Shaka, are you proud of yourself?
I am. I'm not the one to answer that. I'm hoping that I can. I'm a mama's boy. I'm hoping that I can do my mother proud. I'm hoping that I can do my father and the example that he set to me, both as a man and as a father. I hope I can do him proud. And as I just mentioned, I hope that my kids can look at how my life, how I impacted theirs, and be proud of the job that I did. It's not for me to decide or define.
Well, I love your humility. I think I could join with several voices to say that we are proud of you. And
thank you very much.
Sharing this space with you, and I'm so grateful that you did to show up and share how your leadership of yourself is really what drives you to make an impact. And it's so beautiful to watch because, I mean, you've been playing on a world stage for a very long time. And over the 20, 30 odd years that you've been around in that space, I have seen your transition. And I am seeing and I'm hearing your voice. It gets stronger every time. I see all of the things that you represent. And I see your difference. Your difference is not cringeworthy. It's celebratory. It's just lovely and refreshing to watch. So I want to thank you for showing up with us today. And any last words for our audience?
Let me just say, well, to you, Maxine, thank you very much for allowing me this time and sharing your space with you. And my only last words to Trinidad and Tobago will be, again, to find our truth, tell our story, because it is valued. But it can only be valued when we first see the value and appreciate the value in who we are and the stories that we have to tell.
So thank you, Shaka Hislop, for joining us today. And I just want to recap a few things that really struck me in this interview. Sometimes our stories start with the people before us. We can claim the good parts of that story and find power from those stories. Definitely on our self journey, every part of your journey, every part of whom you are, you can use that to really make a difference. Our social media platforms and our other platforms are to be used for the common good. What message are you trying to spread? You can use that on all of those mediums. And of course, for those of us who are wondering where we are, who we want to be, write your obituary and use that obituary as your guiding force to pull you to the person who you want to be. So Shaka, thank you so much for joining us and spending time with us here today. And if you're watching, if you want to see a repeat of the program, 12 o'clock on Friday, we'll be here again, repeat of the program. If you have any questions, comments, or otherwise, send us a note on wesncc.com. Thank you so much for joining us today. Bye, Shaka.